Welcome to Champions of Data and AI, brought to you by Databricks. In each episode, we salute champions of data and AI, the change agents who are shaking up the status quo. These mavericks are rethinking how data and AI can enhance the human experience. We'll dive into their challenges and celebrate their successes, all while getting to know these leaders a little more personally.
Welcome to the Champions of Data and AI series. I'm Chris D'Agostino, your host for today's episode. In this episode, I'm joined by Slawek, SVP and Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Humana. Healthcare is increasingly turning to data to improve the services it provides to its customers. Slawek provides his personal views of the role of data and AI in healthcare equity, how the Lakehouse architecture can enable key insights while still protecting patient information, and finally, on a personal level, he'll share his views on how leadership coaching helps him and his team achieve big goals. Let's get started. Slawek, welcome to Champions of Data and AI.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Chris.
Yeah, so, when we met the first time, it was really fascinating because we talked a lot about coaching and mentorship, in addition to just sort of the big challenge you have at Humana to run the data and AI function for the entire organization. Wanted to learn a little bit more about your passion around coaching and mentoring and developing other leaders within the company and how that how you tackle that on a daily basis.
Well, it's a great question, and as you know, our domain is evolving so fast that we all need to have this learning mindset. Nobody knows it all anymore. I mean, the whole space of AI and data and cloud got so massive that we just need to appreciate the immense amount of skill. And at the same time, we as kind of leaders for this space in our enterprises have this role to help others grow and to evangelize. And when it comes to that and to the leadership style, I'm always a believer in the servant leadership, in promoting the learning culture. And finally, the fact that leadership actually equals results. So I use various formats. We started simply by, a lot of reverse and personal and team mentoring, including all of our management team. So we all, got sessions with me personally, but also leverage, of course, my team to deliver a lot of this learning. Then, I think a lot is done by symbols that leaders bring. So literally the first 3 months when I came to Humana, I took my team and my peers to all kinds of conferences, at that time still in person, the Build, the Data and AI Summit, the important moments where data science community meets, and just encouraged people to get on this learning journey. And now we matured a lot. Now it's all different. We have bespoke trainings that are built for various career paths for analysts and data scientists. We run our regular talent reviews. We have internal conferences actually that bring thousands of people. We have competitions, hackathons. We have rotation of our analytics talent, a bespoke program to promote rotation between different units. So the data scientists and analysts kind of exchange perspective. And we promote, this as an important thing. That's part of our values, and this is how we reward people. And this kind of technical mastery is important. And maybe final point, I also stretch myself to run very flat organization. So I have many direct reports, and I have bespoke time in my calendar every single day to connect with them and to also connect with my peers. Because I learned through the time that, this, technology is an important aspect, of course. I just talked about that, but the people aspect is so important, and the kind of soft skills that you need to have to ensure that your team is motivated and moving on and growing, and frankly, also that you have permission space from all of these other executives to drive a transformation that we all need to drive in our enterprises.
Yeah, and talk to a lot of leaders, there's definitely the role of when you're leading a transformation, I think of it as managing up and managing down in terms of the people that are your peers or senior executives that you need to continually update and convince them that things are on the right track or make adjustments if things are not moving as you want. But that I love what you're talking about, where you're working with your direct reports and the broader community within your team about upskilling, building the confidence of the team. The rotation sounds like it's an interesting model to give people a different perspective on the other work that's being done. And oftentimes gaining that perspective, they're willing to be more collaborative because they have an appreciation of the difficulty of some of the other tasks.
100%. And this collaboration is so fundamental because as we all know, data models and reports analytics become so much more relevant and precise when it's based on more and more different types of data. So if you bring this data democratization, culture, and understanding of what data is available, also through rotation, you catalyze this movement. So that's part of what I do. And actually, I even went on bespoke coaching training at some stage. Went through all of the certification to learn how to coach people, and I use it quite a bit also to help me advance this type of culture.
From our last conversation, you actually have a coach yourself, and why don't you share with the audience a little bit about that? I mean, you've gone through the certification, you kind of know the process and the tools that are used, you apply them for your own staff and other members of the organization, but then at the same time, you take time out of your schedule to make sure that you're getting feedback and some coaching. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, 100%. That's what I do. And it's just because I'm a believer that all of us have an opportunity to develop and grow. And how it works, well, we talk a lot. So it's clear every 2 weeks or so, and my coach gives me a lot of homework. So it's time with him, but also, ideas emerge that motivate me to take maybe a bit different action than I would do otherwise. And it's all about getting faster to results. I deeply believe that through these conversations, through helping me see the world, thanks to the questions that the coach asked, it helps me see the world through different perspective, and broadens my understanding, and helps me accelerate on the mission that we have. So essentially, I'm a deep believer that it is not important what level you are in the organization. I think coaching could help you, and looking at yourself from broader perspective, getting this kind of confronting questions from the coach gives you additional perspective, and ultimately leads to faster, better results.
Yeah, I was, prior to Databricks, I was at a Fortune 50 company, and as an executive there, I had a coach assigned to me, and he was fantastic. And I think the thing that I learned, as someone with a background in computer science and engineering, learning some of the soft skills and how to better work with, other executives in the organization, translating the culture into, how I communicate and how I behave within the organization was important. Really, just some really good professional lessons learned. Not quite at the stage of being able to certify myself as a coach and apply it, but I certainly try to mentor people. And here at Databricks, there are people within our field engineering group that I spend time with mentoring to be able to have more elevated conversations with executives like yourself.
And I believe it is so important, because you bring this very relevant experience from an enterprise that is a user of technologies that Databricks now develops. So having someone like you internally in the organization must be super helpful to the product teams and leaders that need to develop new features, help prioritize and understand what actually is relevant from enterprise point of view.
Well, let's switch gears now a little bit and talk, when we talked last time, you said something really interesting, and this was true in my past career, my past role, where the primary function of a company was not directly in the technology space, but yet technology was so critical to its success that we described the company as a technology company first that happened to offer up a service or a product that most people wouldn't normally identify with as technology. And Humana is the same way, in that you describe it as a technology company, but when somebody goes to the website, they're really there visiting to figure out what type of health products are available to them. But can you talk a bit about that distinction where you're really trying to drive, the mindset within the organization to think from a technology standpoint?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, and truly so. We of course are a healthcare services company, right? So and a company that has a culture of innovation. If you look into the history of Humana, so much change has happened over the last 40 years or so. But for now, similar to, I believe, any company out there, in order to be successful, we need to be on this journey to transition to be more, technologically intense, infused with data, with analytics, to be able to in the end achieve our mission to help our members live better, healthier lives. So technology is super important, and I think it brings value on a couple of levels to the company. First, for members, it enables this differentiated, personalized, simplified healthcare experience, and that helps us achieve some awards in terms of that experience perspective. Then for associates, there's so much opportunity, and we see it in a couple of models and proof points and processes we've already transformed to eliminate burden, to eliminate mundane tasks, and replace that with AI. So simple things like we get thousands of faxes every day with people's medical history to substantiate pre-approval process. Those faxes so far had to be manually attached to cases by nurses. So nurses, and we of course are facing a shortage of nurses in our society, would have to spend time on this kind of mundane administrative tasks. Well, right now we have an AI algorithm that kind of digitizes those faxes, scans, does optical character recognition, and then matches to the right case, and a lot of this is eliminated. So associates get better, experience, and finally, enterprise accelerates, and also an important stakeholder for us, of course, are our investors. And we all observe the market and see how those companies that are technologically advanced are getting a better valuation, because ultimately, the market believes, and I do as well. I'm sure many of us here and the listeners also do, that there is a lot of future in front of data and AI, and those companies that master those will eventually have a faster and more profitable future and more growth. So that's how I look at this, and I believe we have to move aggressively. We are moving aggressively into this space, and there's a lot that technology can bring to healthcare.
Yeah, and if you think about healthcare in general and the role that data and AI play in terms of equity, I think of health as one part genetic, one part environmental, one part lifestyle. Maybe there are other factors, but those are the ones that come to mind for me. And now everybody has access to, most people have access to devices that can track the number of steps that they take, their heart rate. Curious about what you think the role of data and AI is for healthcare equity, and what some of the challenges might be.
Yeah, that's a very, very important topic, especially in this moment of transformation. Setting these things right is such a critical component. And as I said, AI and machine learning and data can deliver more easy and seamless healthcare experience, which we all want, from our healthcare providers. But it can also reflect and magnify the unintended biases that are there in the historical data. So it's important thing to tackle. But I'm a huge believer that it is way easier to remove unintended bias from an algorithm than it is from thousands of individual decisions of different constituents, providers, and humans that are making these decisions today. So for this reason, Humana is committed to developing and fostering this more equitable and inclusive AI by couple of things. Now we are examining our models for bias, and we are taking appropriate actions that include our principles. We actually have formal 6 principles of our AI development. Everybody can see them on our website, so they are public. In mid-2020, actually, we also signed an Equal AI pledge. That's a pledge that holds us accountable to make sure that every model is tested for unintended bias and that we take appropriate actions, and that we even expect our partners, our vendors that help us deliver our service to do the same. So that's key to our mission. And maybe one more point is, it's not just important to do it once. Of course, there is also ongoing monitoring that's going on of all of these models, and because drift can come in, and the unintended bias can creep in as we are in development.
That sounds like a really nice sort of transparent way of doing the underwriting process when you're assessing individuals for healthcare coverage and things like that.
It is, yeah. Well, and that's one part of it. There are a lot of decisions also, Chris, that happen in the company that are around our proactive care management and outreach, which, by the way, I think, and maybe we have a chance to talk about this a bit later, is a greatest opportunity to move from reactive to proactive care, and therefore, there's huge role of AI to decide to whom to outreach and for what reason, and how to help the person. So these actions need to be monitored for bias, and I know that you have a lot of history in financial services, but what I learned in healthcare is that this topic is very different in this industry. So kind of every company needs to answer it for themselves. Whether you're a technology providers, but the topic of AI equity is different in financial services. And I know that a lot of work is there around removing those potentially important features from the models, like age or gender or race, that they shouldn't be steering your underwriting or your credit decisions. In healthcare, we cannot do that because a lot of your healthcare diagnostics, the progression of disease, the way you are treated, actually does depend on age. We treat differently newborns and differently older people. They do depend on race. Frankly, there are some diseases that actually progress differently depending on that, and they do, of course, differ depending on gender. So we'll not send you for the same diagnostics. So we just cannot remove those. We need to learn how to deal with results of the model and make sure that everybody has equal opportunity, while we still take into account all of this important flags.
Yeah, and so that raises sort of the next issue for me, or topic, which is around data architecture and the role the architecture plays in governing data. As you say, you've got to include a lot of this very sensitive information that many organizations and other verticals really aim to remove from the data sets to prevent bias. But in healthcare, these factors actually contribute to, as you say, disease progression, the protocols that are used. So can you talk a little bit about the architecture? And, we spoke a bit about the Lakehouse architecture of combining, the governance and structure associated with data warehousing with the flexibility of a data lake and looking at different data types. How does the Lakehouse architecture, in your mind, help contribute to governing the data and making sure those data sets are of good quality and used for the right use cases?
So of course, as we talked earlier, I'm a deep believer in this type of architectures for a couple of reasons. So one, we of course have a lot of data already, and there will be more and more, as you already indicated, Chris. There's devices that people carry, the virtual care, telehealth, growth. All of this will contribute to more and more data sets, which are best captured for machine learning purpose within the data lake type of architectures. But then we also quickly find out that for the purpose of running analytics, KPIs, managing the various processes internally, you do want to have structured data products which are governed, and you need to be able to marry both, because for the purpose of data quality, you don't want to have separation. I believe that actually having in one architecture both a data warehouse and a data lake, and from the same data sets, operational reporting, which gets looked at by executives, and through this gets this feedback loop of quality. If the same data set is then used for machine learning model, of course, models, we kind of have better guarantee that those models are relying on high quality data. So for this purpose, I see a lot of future in continued development of those Lakehouse type of architectures. That's what we have right now at Humana, and we see tremendous pickup of this. So almost 100 machine learning models that are way more precise. We have almost 20,000 users of our analytics reporting platform that sits on top of data warehousing capabilities within the structure. So huge future in front of it.
Yeah. And, as you look back on your career and having been involved in different transformations, one of the things that I was on a call earlier today, and one of the executives said, they feel like they're in sort of the next wave of innovation in architecture where, it was enterprise data warehouses in the 1980s, and then it was, Hadoop-based ecosystems in the mid-2000s, and now this Lakehouse concept. And said, they're always seeing sort of the cycle of the architectures evolving. And he said, he wonders how long before it'll be the next thing. And, so the technology definitely keeps changing, but when you see these transformations take place, can you talk a bit about, how the organization, the non-technical aspects, has there been consistent things in the transformations that you've been a part of or have led that you see as being critical to companies being successful?
Yeah, for sure. I see a lot of concepts that actually repeat themselves, and I saw from my past, from like more than 20 years ago, where I was at Procter & Gamble and had an ability to bring that technology transformation to supply chain and factories. This is when we're moving from pneumatic to data-based control and bringing some first algorithms there. A lot of this learnings about process management and feedback and data quality and signal and distinguishing signal from the noise, are useful right now. And then I was running biggest database in Europe at that time for longitudinal view of consumers. We had more than 80 million of those, with very interesting, of course, progress at that time that Europe was making around privacy and this legislation. So again, that is useful to have, and this kind of concepts of how you think about data protection, and how do you work with privacy executives, with risk, with your CISO. That certainly is something that I use quite a bit. And then at Microsoft, the transformation that Microsoft went through is of course amazing. It was great to be part of it with the company under the leadership of Satya, and be able to co-create some of the fastest growing platforms and products, and learn how to think about agile software engineering, the KPIs, the metrics that you use for platforms, the network effects in platforms, and we reuse a lot of this right now internally at Humana as that kind of Lakehouse concept. So what we call internal enterprise data platform and enterprise data platform analytics, services, as well as our machine learning platform. That becomes our platform, internal platform that creates the network effect of getting more data, and through this better quality insights, better precision of models, and then therefore more interventions as models drive with members, and more data comes to the platform itself.
So Slawek, I know from the last time we talked, you have a very important job. You've had a career at Procter & Gamble, Microsoft, now Humana, probably some stressful days. And I know sailing is an important thing for you to go out and enjoy being on the water. Can you talk a little bit about the type of sailing? Because I think the audience will find it fascinating.
Right, Chris. So you're right. I cannot wait for the time when we can be with bigger crowds of people in a more confined space, like a sailing boat. I used it a number of times in the past where I took my team on the water, or on a lake, or on the sea here, and that is something I haven't been doing for the last 2 years. So really looking forward to that. But I understand that you also like all kinds of sports outside. So is this boats or what do you like to do, Chris?
Yeah, well, I love boats, and I guess since you're in Boston, there's probably like 2 weeks out of the year you can sail that it's warm enough. Otherwise, it's too cold.
Maybe 4.
Yeah, maybe 4. Perfect. So let's hope everything is kind of back to normal as soon as possible, so that you don't miss those 4 weeks of warm weather there. For me, mine's a little bit. I love being on the water as well, of course, but flying and being up in an airplane and piloting a plane is really fun. It's interesting because, similar to our jobs with trying to build systems that are precise and produce good quality results, the sort of the style of sailing you do and the team-oriented aspect of that, or in my case, the idea of piloting a plane and following, a flight plan and needing to stay compliant with all the rules and regulations for altitude and direction and all these things. It keeps you on your toes, and it's a lot of fun, and it's certainly a stress reliever for sure. So let's shift into kind of wrapping up here. I think there are 2 things that I'd love to hear a little bit more about. The first is, given that coaching is so important to you and the success of your team and the success of your career, from a personal level, is there something you can share with the audience about, something that you're continuing to work on? This continuous improvement is always a key theme, and whenever you and I speak. So share with us something that you've sought after some coaching and really are trying to work on and focus on in 2021.
Well, sure thing, and there's probably not one. There are many things. So let me give you, 2 or 3. So I think one thing consistently through my career, because I was born as an engineer and a data scientist, it was about communication, and that probably is even amplified because, as you of course all can hear, I speak with an accent in a foreign language. So I spent a lot of time, developing my ability to communicate at various levels, from communication in bigger forums, smaller forums, with a board, with other executives. So that has consistently been part of my coaching and training and development. Then technology is always on the list. I always try to spend some time in an interesting conference, some time reading, actually including also reading journals, and a couple of articles a month help me keep my knowledge current around the developments in the space. And then finally, the biggest fascination of the last 2 years has been healthcare. Healthcare was totally new to me. It's a fascinating field. It's way more complicated than I thought, coming in here. So I'm still, maybe crawling, not yet running, but I think I know enough to be dangerous, and certainly have a lot of fun and pleasure, spending time both learning and working with my colleagues that are some of the best healthcare professionals in the US. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, I like that you talk about stepping into a role, and such a big role at that, where maybe you walked into that role feeling pretty confident around your technical acumen, but maybe the vertical itself was a little bit scary because you didn't have a long history in healthcare. So what, that seems to me to be a really nice, sort of this willingness to take a risk, and knowing that you believe in yourself enough that you can rise to the occasion, I suppose. Can you talk a bit about what advice you'd share with people that are aspiring for a role like yours inside of an organization?
Yeah. So what I would say, you want to be in a place that helps you practice at the top of your license, which is a term actually, which is very common in healthcare. And what it means for data science and analytics professionals is you want to be in a place where there is a lot of data, where there is a lot of information to be processed, where there is access to modern cloud technology and some form of permission space to advance methods and new sophistication and innovation. So clearly Humana is a place like this, and I'm sure there are a few other as well. But choose for a place where actually you have access to large amount of data. And then finally, another thing is you want to be in a place that has good values, that has good ethics, that has good purpose, that motivates you to spend the extra time, go an extra mile to learn, grow, and create change, create transformation. That with your data analytics, data science skills, you clearly.
So to sum it up, head someplace where there's a lot of data so that you can really gain some good insights. Find an organization or a cause that you're really passionate about and motivated to put in the extra time in order to maybe change the world a bit. And I would say in 2021, being in healthcare, there probably hasn't been a more fascinating time to be a technologist in this space, for sure.
Agree. And if I can just add a tag on, I think we're only starting. Honestly, 2021 was this kind of inflection point and acceleration. It gave us more data and more recognition in the industry on how important real-time data is. It changed member habits, consumer habits, to use more of a digital and virtual care. It then positioned us to create more precise models that can turn healthcare from reactive to proactive. And this is where the fun starts.
Well, Slawek, thank you so much for being on Champions of Data and AI. I appreciate your time. It's always great talking to you.
Thank you, Chris. It was a pleasure. I hope to see you somewhere on a boat or from a boat in a plane. Relatively soon.
I'll be flying overhead.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank you for joining this episode of Champions of Data and AI, brought to you by Databricks. Thousands of data leaders rely on Databricks to simplify data and AI so data teams can innovate faster and solve the world's toughest problems. Visit Databricks.com to learn how data leaders are unlocking the true potential of all their data.